joining us, and we got a couple of other participants. Just let us know where you're from. We'd like to know where you are joining us. And of course, I'm joining you from Melbourne, and the time here is 9:31. It's 9 degrees. And I just had a quick chat with Nupur, who said it's 45 degrees. Not a fun sight, but it's totally the excitement of wherever we are, wherever the corners we live in, we continue to do in one mission in all our active play of work in whatever we are involved in. So we've got 14 at the moment. Love to hear from you. Anyone else, just feel free to use the chat. Let's keep it as much as interactive as possible, but we're giving space to our presenters to conduct their session as well. So time is the essence, so let's get on with it. So good evening, everyone, and a very warm welcome to today's discussion on the role of liberal youth in the current world order. It's truly encouraging to see young leaders as well as change makers and representatives from across the regions coming together to exchange ideas on democracy, freedom, civic participation, and evolving the role of youth leadership in today's global landscape. And in a world shaped by rapid political, technological, and social change, young people are no longer just observers of the history. They're not quiet, they're quite loud, and we see both sexes coming out and voicing their concerns. They're actively participating and influencing their policies, their advocacy, their innovation, and the democratic dialogue. So today's discussion aims to explore how liberal youth movements can contribute meaningfully towards defending the democratic values, promoting the inclusion, combating misinformation, and strengthening the international cooperation as well. We're especially pleased to have with us participants representing 5 young liberal organizations joining us from Colombo, along with the distinguished speakers and panelists from across Asia, Europe, and international liberal youth networks as well. So today's session will bring together perspectives from South Asia, Indo-Pacific, Europe, allowing us better to understand both the challenges and opportunities facing liberal youth movements globally. Now, I did mention that we had participants joining us from the Colombo, the 5 young liberal organizations. Just a quick shout out to them: liberal youth movements, liberal youth guilds, liberal fellowship, Students for Liberty, and the Lalit Adulat Mudali Research Center. The team is joining us as well. So good to have you all with us. Drop in a comment in the section saying hi to us, because we'd love to hear from you, and let's make it interactive as possible. All right, so today's connect of the speaker and our panelists brings in a very nice flavor to our discussion. It's now my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker, who is Nupur Hasija from Frederick Norman Foundation for Freedom, India office. And we're also honored to be joined by our distinguished panelists, Hania Keo from International Federation of Liberal Youth. We also have Michelle Yu representing the Council of Asian Liberals and Democrats Youth. And we also have Calvin Nixon from the Young Liberal. Before we begin the discussion, we also want to give a big shout out to briefly introduce you to Spark Inbox, the organization hosting today's webinar. And here's a little message from them.
In today's fast-changing world, organizations need more than good ideas. They need knowledge, networks, strategy, and the confidence to act. Spark Inbox is a capacity-building and networking think tank based in Sri Lanka. We work with state institutions, local and international businesses, NGOs, civic organizations, and youth groups to strengthen their ability to create lasting impact. Our work focuses on helping organizations plan better, communicate with purpose, and respond effectively to emerging challenges. Through training programs, workshops, policy discussions, knowledge-sharing sessions, and strategic advisory services, Spark Inbox supports organizations to build stronger teams, improve decision-making, and turn ideas into action. But Spark Inbox is more than a capacity building platform. We also act as a bridge between Sri Lanka and global knowledge. Over the past months, we have worked with leading experts from Europe and beyond, bringing international insights to Sri Lanka in areas such as business and human rights, migrant entrepreneurship, artificial intelligence, education, leadership, and democratic engagement. We believe global knowledge becomes truly powerful when it is connected to local realities. One of our key milestones was bringing the new School of Leadership to Asia for the first time. In February this year, Spark Inbox hosted the first new leadership workshop in Colombo, creating a unique learning space for professionals, emerging leaders, and changemakers. Today, Spark Inbox is proud to serve as a News Asian partner, continuing to connect regional leaders with global leadership knowledge, tools, and practices. At its heart, Spark Inbox is an enabler and a connector. We bring people, ideas, institutions, and expertise together to help organizations grow stronger, think broader, and act with confidence.
That Spark Inbox for you with their video on the areas of work that they do. Fabulous job. Thank you for everything you share. And let's dive back into our topic for today. All right. To introduce you to our guest speaker as well as our panelists now, we have a good mix, I would say, networking with policymakers, handling the whole South Asia region and Europe as well. And then we've got justice and equality. We're talking about a psychiatrist, bringing in the areas of human behavior and mental strength. And then we also have someone who is linked up with a lot with youth and the kind of connections that it's built upon in taking this forward. And then bringing on someone who's experience with conflict research and also international conflict research is the blend that we have today for the discussion. So we'd like to first introduce you to our guest speaker. And she holds the position of the head of programs at the Frederick Norman Foundation for Freedom India office. At FNF, she is actively engaged with non-governmental organizations operating in the domains of education, property rights, good governance, liberal democracy, and the livelihood issues in India, Nepal, Bhutan, and Bangladesh. Her role includes networking with policymakers, elected representatives across political parties in the South Asia region and Europe, and she has mentored numerous youth organizations and networks throughout India and South Asia. She's very much dedicated for the liberal values, and she ardently embraces the philosophy of learning every life experience. Good to connect with you again. Our guest speaker, Nupur Hasija, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for this kind introduction. I look forward to this webinar today and discuss the role of youth in today's world order. And I really look forward that we come up with some discussions which would make all of us feel inspired as well as motivated.
Nupur, a lot of things have started now, and especially with the young generation being involved, how they've opened their minds and looking at how much they're very strategically coming out in engaging in a number of activities. We'd like to start with you and your side of experience in a presentation or conversation by sharing how do we go with this forward?
Sure. So you want me to answer this question, or should I just, what is the format? You will be asking me questions and you want me to respond on that, or you want me to just give my opening remarks on this
I would love to
subject?
hear your opening remarks. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I will. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Samantha, for the invitation, and thank you, Sharon, for the very kind introduction. And congratulations to the Spark Inbox team for organizing this timely and very important discussion. We are meeting at at the moment in history when the global order feels very unsettled and uncertain across regions. We are witnessing democratic backsliding, I would say, rising geopolitical tensions, deepening political polarization, identity-based conflicts, climate anxieties, economic insecurity, and the disruptive impact of technology and AI on how societies communicate and mobilize. In such a time, many of the values of liberal stands for freedom, rule of law, human rights, tolerance, open societies, and democratic participation are being tested. Yet, paradoxically, these are precisely the values the world needs most right now. This is why today's conversation is not only relevant but urgent. What makes this moment even more significant is the role young people are playing in shaping political and social discourse globally, which even Sharon also just said in her introductory remarks. Young people today are not only passive observers, they are shaping narratives, mobilizing communities, challenging institutions, and redefining activism through both digital platform and grassroots movements. This is particularly true for South Asia, home to one of the largest youth population in the world. In many countries across the region, nearly two-thirds of the population is under the age of 35. This demographic reality carries enormous political, economic, and social implications. A young population can be tremendous democratic asset when supported with opportunity, education, participation, and civic engagement. But if issues such as unemployment, exclusion, shrinking civic spaces, misinformation, and polarization remains unaddressed, frustrations among young people can just as easily deepen social divisions and democratic instability. This is where liberal youth groups become critically important. They create platforms for dialogue, critical thinking, democratic engagement, and policy participation. They help bridge the gap between institutions and citizens, between local governance and global values, and between political participation and public accountability. In my work with the Friedrich Naumann Foundation for Freedom, I have had the opportunity to engage closely with many youth networks, emerging youth organizations, and liberal students and young professional groups across the region. This experience has been deeply inspiring but also instructive. I have met founding members who are passionately committed to liberal values and who dedicate immense time and energy to building these organizations from the ground up. Their dedication is admirable. However, I have also observed a recurring challenge. While founders are work tirelessly to build platforms, they often do not invest equally in building the next line of leadership. Structured pathways to mentor, train, and empower young leaders are often missing. As a result, when leadership transition occur, the continuity of the organization and sometimes even the cause becomes fragile. And this is a very critical issue in the current world order because if liberal youth movement themselves are not sustainable, intergenerational, and future ready, their ability to depend and promote democratic values weakens over time. Liberal youth movements today also face additional challenges. Political discourse is increasingly polarized. Misinformation spreads faster than facts. Trust in institutions is declining, and liberal ideas are sometimes perceived as disconnected from the everyday concern and insecurities of ordinary citizens. This raises important questions for all of us. How do liberal youth communicate democratic values in ways that resonate more widely? How do we balance freedom with concerns around identity, security, and economic uncertainty? How can young liberal leaders move beyond activism into policy making and governance? And importantly, how do we ensure that youth organizations themselves are resilient and sustainable? One important way forward is to build youth networks, spaces where organizations can come together not only to discuss challenges, but to exchange methods, share experiences, learn from failures, and collectively strengthen one another. We must consciously nurture the next generation of liberal youth leaders through mentorship, skill building, institutional memory, and leadership pathways. We must help young people understand not only what liberal values stand for, but how to sustain these values in practice over time. Because the future we are discussing is their future, a future where they deserve to live peaceful, democratic, inclusive and resilient societies. Liberal youth are not only defenders of democratic values, they are the architect of the democratic future. I hope today's discussion encourages honest reflection, meaningful exchange, and practical ideas on how liberal youth can contribute to build more open, inclusive, and democratic societies. Thank you once again, and I look forward to the discussion ahead.
Thank you, Nupur. Thank you for sharing us those opening remarks and also bringing a couple of highlights that where we are mainly concerned, where we need to continue, what we need to do in terms of resilience and sustenance, the new bridge of networks. All of that is important. And also, I know that I will come back to you with a little bit of, do we carry the history as well along with us with the new generation, or are we going to continue with a new flavor, a new strategy of how they want to go about as well? So we're going to come back to you with that as we move on to our next speaker, as we introduce our next speaker now. Throughout her involvement at IFLRY, Hania has demonstrated a profound commitment to justice, equality, and the protection of fundamental human rights. She's a trained psychologist, and she brings an emphatic understanding on human behavior and the mental health dimensions tied to human rights issues. Now, this is something that's hardly being spoken, sometimes often hidden, or not even brought to highlight as well. Her background provides her with the unique insights into ways of discrimination, exclusion, and the trauma impact marginalized individuals, enriching her advocacy work with both expertise and compassion. And she has organized and led several seminars on female and queer rights, initiatives that have been instrumental in empowering young liberals with IFLRY and beyond. She has first-hand experience navigating the unique human rights challenges faced by individuals in her region, allowing her to approach global issues with nuanced perspective that bridges cultural and social boundaries. Good to connect with you. And how are you, Hania?
Hey everyone. So first, once again, thank you for having me in this panel. It's such an honor to connect with all of you, so we can also discuss and we can talk more about IFLRY, the International Federation of Liberal Youth, that I'm proudly presenting it today. So yes, thank you for having me.
Hania, take me through. You've probably gone through, I know everybody involved has gone through some sort of a phase, a challenge, an experience throughout their lives. Share us your message as an opening remark of what you have to go beyond in this topic.
So if I want to reflect a bit on my experience, and I think this is something also very important to remind everyone that when it comes to the IFLRY bubble, anyone that wants to be a political activist or want to be an activist, it's either because they either witnessed some injustice in this world or they live in this injustice. And in my case, it's where I do live in that injustice. And this is what it actually pushed me to be an activist since my younger age. So I am from Lebanon, and Lebanon is such a interesting political dynamic to actually look at it, even when it comes to our laws, when it comes to how we have some militias in the country, how that threatens our freedom of speech as well, how there is political assassinations that come. And this is how I grew up. I grew up with, there is a fear that Hezbollah, which is a terrorist organization in our country, can actually kill people, can assassinate people because they speak up against Hezbollah, and they are in favor of the rule of law. So that is something that gives me more of a motivation to continue, more of a motivation to speak up about those issues. And this is how I connected with Iflori. My organization as well in Lebanon, which is a classic liberal political party, our founder of our party, he got assassinated in 2005 by Hezbollah. And he was from the very few politicians in the region that was always advancing for the peace in the region, which is something that usually populist people do take advantage from wars, so they can go more into the extreme. What we did is to remain in the center, and with everything that our country and our region is going to, I would say that it's really challenging to stay in the center, but we have to stay in the center and to reconnect with our values, why we choose to do, why we choose to be liberals, and why we have to continue defending liberalism and protecting it from a regional perspective and from the Lebanon perspective. So if I also want, or if you want, we can also leave that to later questions, but maybe that is more of reflecting of why on a personal level I choose to be a frontliner in that. On a personally, even with all my activism years in Lebanon, I used to get threatened directly, physical threats, calls of being killed by people from Hezbollah. Even on Twitter, I used to get a lot of hate comments from their own supporter, because I speak up very directly, and this is what our party always we say, that we need to have zero fear. Even if we are getting assassinated, we still need to continue with having zero fear. Or else, if you are fearing to point out what's going on, then who would do this? So this is why the people that knows me knows that I'm someone that is very passionate of speaking up, very passionate of talking about the issues that do really matter for me. Because again, if no one talks about this, and if people were more afraid to talk about this, then who would do? So no matter what, and with all the challenges that it might face me on a personal level as well, and with my family, my friends as well, I remain committed to always showcasing that liberal is the only solution that can actually have a solution for today's problem in my country and in the region.
Thank you, Hania. You brought in a very different perspective, just like liberals as well. But to just connect it what Nupur said, where we're moving with the digital and grassroots movements, and then to have the different points of bringing peace as the top priority, and then moving on from there to stay at the center of bringing out the messages that we have. And of course, you need the liberals to be or talk forward. So when we come back to you, we're going to come back with probably sharing an example that we'd love to hear another one as well, because you've probably seen a lot more of things that's happening in the recent past as well. All right, we're going to move on to our next speaker, and joining us now is the chairperson of Cal Youth and the deputy director of the Department of Youth Development of the Democratic Progressive Party in Taiwan, Michelle Yu. She oversees youth political engagement, coordinates nationwide youth networks, and advances youth-related policy initiatives. Previously, she served as a legislative associate to legislator Hung Soon Hung in the Legislative Yuan, focusing on youth development, environmental sustainability, and transportation safety. And before her parliamentary work, she was the president of the National Taiwan University Student Association and founded the Taiwan Youth Association for Democracy, where she supported Taiwan's marriage equality movement and organized solidarity actions for Hong Kong movement in 2019. Good to have you with us, Michelle. Good evening or good afternoon.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Michelle from Taiwan. It's really nice to see everyone, especially our friends, for holding this event. And thank you for inviting me, and also Hania and Calvin. It's really my pleasure to be on the same platform with you too. I'm Michelle from Taiwan, and for today's topics, I think twice before I organized my sharing today, but what I would like to share about is from my own experience. I was a social movement activist before I participated in DPP Taiwan. And for people who may not know well about DPP Taiwan, that DPP have been the governing party in Taiwan for the past 10 years as a Democrat and Liberal Party. It is seldom to see in Asia because most of the time the Democrat and Liberal Party would seldom be the governing ones for such a long time. But when I was participating in social movement as a youth activist, I mainly participate in the same-sex marriage movement in Taiwan, and which make Taiwan the first country in Asia to legalize same-sex marriage, and also participate in the Hong Kong movement support for the Hong Kongers in 2019. And these two social movement actually brings me to be closer to DPP. At the time, DPP was already the governing party. So for most of the youth activists, we would rather stay more independent than being close to a political party. But what makes DPP Taiwan different is because Taiwan is a country, unlike many of the Asian countries in Asia, that we are counterparting with a very strong authoritarian regime beside us, which is China. And therefore, a lot of youth in Taiwan would rather to be closer to the governing party that's DPP because it is a party that stays strong in protecting the independence of Taiwan and make Taiwan one of the very important democratic party in Asia. So that is a brief sharing of my experience that why I become, when I was a social movement activist, but now I'm a full-time staff working in DPP as a governing party. But there's still some, I think there's some things that I learned from this transition is that when we were the youth liberal activists in the social movement, we protest and we voice out our stance very clearly. When we're also working in a liberal political party, there's something we do advocate and we do open the dialogue, but we also learn to compromise and come up with a consensus that meets the needs of different people. So in today's sharing, if we have time later, I may share about some of the examples from my experience that mainly is about the first thing is as a young activist, how I advocate and open the dialogue, and then I may compromise for some part of it, and then come up with a consensus within Taiwan that we get able to be the first country in Asia to pass same-sex marriage. And the second one is how Taiwanese young activists cooperate with the youth around Asia, especially from Hong Kong and Tibetan in cooperation to counterpart with the expansion of power from China. And I think these two examples may be the stories I would like to share in the follow-up discussion. Thank you.
Awesome. So there are two examples coming up and some exciting ways that you're going to elaborate us in detail because how did it start would be a very promising question that I would ask, because a lot of them would be very way forward in coming to connect, but then also for them to study about it, to get engaged, to understand the policies of where we want to drive through. Then these are these areas that we really want to discuss. All right, we're going to come back to you, Michelle, as we're going to move on to Calvin now, joining us to give his thoughts and remarks as well. He's completed his bachelor at Heidelberg University in Political Science and South Asian Studies, and his master at Leiden University in International Relations. He's a conflict researcher at the Heidelberg Institute for International Conflict Research, and his research focuses on international relations in the Indo-Pacific region with a particular focus on South Asia. Good to have you with us, Calvin. I think you probably have the most exciting area in points of discussion, because research is something that everybody loves to see how we've looked back and how we're going to move forward as well. What are your thoughts?
Thank you for that very kind introduction, Sharon. Also, thank you for Samantha for the invitation to this event. Always good to be with friends. Happy to see some former colleagues also from FNF South Asia here in this call. Of course, Nupur and Samantha as well. Also happy to see, of course, Hania and Michelle to get your perspectives on, I think, this a very timely and very important topic. From my point of view, of course, I do have two hats on my head, so to say. On the one hand side, as international officer of ULIS, the youth wing of the Free Democratic Party, but also, as you just introduced me, Sharon, as someone who has a background in international relations and conflict research. So I can focus on two different topics during this discussion. On the one hand side, the current world order definitely is, well, marked by increasing instability, fragmentation, disorder, and contestation. So I think that is something that we can definitely elaborate on also later on in the discussion. But another thing that might be interesting to discuss as well is how we as Julis in Germany and also as young liberals in Europe, how we do politics, how we engage in politics, and how we might also differ from our mother parties. So Sharon, just for clarification, because I was initially told that I would have something like 15 minutes for my remarks. What should I rather focus on?
Do you want to
during my
kick
initial
off?
remarks?
Do you want to roll the carpet and go on with your presentation? I'll give you the floor.
All right. Okay, then let's do that. Well, as I already started it off to some degree, we are discussing liberal youth politics at a time when international order is becoming increasingly unstable, fragmented, and contested. And young people nowadays are growing up in a world that is shaped by geopolitical rivalry, by democratic backsliding, economic uncertainty, digital polarization, and of course also a declining trust in political institutions. So whereas I would say like 10, 20, 30 years ago, young people grew up in a world where globalization and internationalism were tied to optimism. Nowadays, globalization is increasingly tied to pessimism and also an increased feeling of anxiety in young people. And that's a problem, I think, for us as liberals, because we as liberals are often seen, and we are often very much in favor of globalization and of internationalism and of cosmopolitanism. So we as liberal youth organizations across the globe need to find solutions to make globalization more attractive again, also to young people, because we are in the end defenders of, I think Nupa framed that as well, democratic resilience. We are drivers of political innovation, and we are drivers of international cooperation. So in the current moment, I like to call it, like I think also other researchers like to call it that way, we're living in a polycrisis. We have multiple crises that reinforce each other. We have multiple wars across the globe. We have economic insecurity, energy shocks. We have migration pressures. We have climate change as a threat, disinformation campaigns by authoritarian countries, and democratic erosion in liberal democracies. And these wars and crises that we see are not isolated events anymore. They are very much increasingly interconnected. When we talk about Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine and its war against Ukraine, when we talk about instability in the Middle East, when we talk about proxy networks, Hanya hinted at it, Iranian proxy networks across the Middle East, like with Hezbollah, with Hamas, North Korean military cooperation with Russia, and China's growing geopolitical assertiveness, be it in the Taiwan Strait, be it in the South China Sea. Those are all challenges that are part of one broader challenge to our liberal international order that we as liberals ought to defend. And authoritarian actors increasingly cooperate. And it seems like at the moment we as liberals and Democrats do have some trouble cooperating. And that is something where we need to get better, and where we as liberals also need to find common solutions and common answers across different continents. So in the end, defending the liberal order is not only something that is important for us in Europe. It's not just about defending the West or what is left of the West, but it means defending open societies across the globe. It means defending democratic institutions across the globe, human dignity, rule of law, and international cooperations, all of those values that are very dear to us as liberals. So where do we as young liberals come in doing about that, and how do we shape politics in general? And now I leave my conflict researcher hat and take on my IO hat of Julis. We as Julis, young liberals in Germany, as a youth wing of the FDP, we are, as Hania will definitely know, a very political organization. We like to engage very actively in politics and ask lots of questions when there are questions. What we do participate in a way differently in politics than our mother party does, in a way that I would say we are still somewhat more activist, and we have a bigger emphasis on political authenticity in politics, in party politics. I think that is also something that would apply to other youth wings in Germany as well. But I would say we as Julis, definitely more than other youth wings in Germany, also really function as a policy laboratory for our party, as a laboratory for innovative campaign structures, political education platforms, and also simply for driving modernization within our party. Some of you might know the FDP is in a bit of a difficult situation in Germany at the moment, so this is more important than ever before, that we as Julis also uphold that function. And also to just give you some concrete examples of some ideas, policies that started in Julis and later on became mainstream ideas within the FDP, but actually also in German politics in general. Those would, for instance, be the abolition of universal conscription in Germany that started as an idea within Julis, the adoption of same-sex marriage that started as an idea in Julis, legalization and decriminalization of marijuana, for instance, as well, or our push for a European federal state and a European army, as well as a stock-based pension system, which has been now even taken up as an idea by the Greens in Germany. So those are some concrete examples of where we as young liberals actually shaped German politics and policy debates in Germany very actively. Now, one more aspect that Samantha also asked me to address is the rise of right-wing extremism and the rise of right-wing parties in Germany, but in Europe in general. And it is indeed a big problem, but I think there is one underlying aspect as to why it has become such a big problem. And that is that there's simply a lack of trust in democracy and a lack of trust in the so-called political center. So many young people, increasingly, not just young people, but increasingly also young people, perceive politics as being too slow and as being disconnected from realities, everyday realities. And that is a big problem for us as liberals, because we as liberals are, of course, part of the so-called old guard in Germany and in most other European countries, especially in Western Europe as well. So we are often seen as being somewhat elitist, as being too academic and being disattached from the everyday realities of many peoples. And I have to say that at least in the last elections, we as liberals in Germany unfortunately did not really find a solution to that problem, hence our election result. But I also think that this is a problem not just in Germany, but also for liberals in other parts of the world. For instance, like last month, I had the chance to visit the Democratic Alliance in South Africa and also had some very fruitful discussions there. Even though the Democratic Alliance is a very successful political party in South Africa, I heard many of the same concerns that I also hear in Germany as well, when it comes to being perceived as too elitist, too academic, and not speaking the language that many of the, well, common people, so to say, speak as well. So that's a challenge for political communication for us. And of course, social media is a important factor there as well, as it has, on the one hand, increased political participation, but has also played its fair share to increase fragmentation, politically speaking, but also radicalization and disinformation. And if you look at the success of the far right and the far left in Germany on social media, you can also see a direct link there to their success with the younger people in the last Bundestag elections. So much on the domestic perspective, I would say, in Germany. And now to finish it up, let me try to link it to how we as liberals in Germany and liberals in Asia can work together and cooperate. As I said, many of the challenges that we face are common challenges, be it authoritarian influence, be it democratic erosion, disinformation campaigns, or geopolitical instability. And I think actually this whole seminar is a great way to start it off, to solve some of these issues, because I think it always starts with speaking with each other. And those debates, those discussions should never be like a one-way like transfer of ideas. It should not be the Europeans that only talk about how good they do things, and the others should follow, as it sometimes is the case in international politics. It should really be an exchange of ideas and exchange of experiences, because I do think that we as young leaders, politicians in Europe, can learn from youth movements in Asia. When I look at Taiwan, for instance, I think there's a lot to learn when it comes to democratic resilience. When I look particularly also at my friends in South Asia, what happened, for instance, over the past year in Nepal, there's a lot to learn about grassroots mobilization, and also in generally speaking, political adaptability, where we as liberals, in particular in Europe, I think struggle a lot. So I don't want to make it too long. To finish it off, international liberal cooperation should not be based on just one side teaching the other, but on recognizing complementary strength. And that's why I'm very happy to be here with you again today, and to also listen now to all of you, and looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Calvin. I let you roll the carpet because research is important to continue the discussion or take it on as a debate and see how far we go. When you brought some important factors that contributes to our conversation today. Despite my promising question is, are we doing politics right? Are we secure? Do we do it the right way, of the new generation's way, or do we stand up always for what's right in society? These are some of the questions that will come back to you. But some of the things that Nupur highlighted was this resilient and sustainability of youth networks, and also understanding the failures that we go through and continuing of the organization with training. Hania, political activists, the injustice, and you said living in injustice. That is something really, really hard, that we constantly see it back and forth. And then we also want it to be the topic of bringing a solution to all the people out there. Do you want to take us through your presentation?
Yes. Okay. So maybe, in fact, if you want to start about why we choose to be liberal again, because that is something that is very fundamental. And I feel when we go into the political atmosphere and with the political life, sometimes we are exhausted, sometimes we are tired, and sometimes we are interested in other propaganda, and people start to go more into those propaganda. So why now? That is a question, in fact, that I keep getting asked in different seminars, in different rooms, in different languages, across different continents. Is liberal and liberalism still relevant? And I find it a strange question, not because it's wrong, but because the people asking it usually are the one who benefit from it the most. So the answer is yes, liberalism is still relevant. We live in a moment where democracy is being hollowed out, not always by tanks and cows, but by elections, by leaders who win votes and then dismantle the very system that brought them to the power. And populism didn't defeat liberalism in a debate. It borrowed its language, weaponized the platform, and told people that freedom means freedom from the others. And young people are caught in the middle of this. You have the algorithm, as also like Calvin did mention this, we have the economic anxious, which many people are leaving politics because at some point they are prioritizing the basic life needs, like having a house, having education. So people are very focusing on that. And then they do forget about the system itself and the system that didn't give those equal opportunities for the others. So this is exactly why liberal youth movement matter. Not despite of the crisis, but because of those crises. We are the one that we have to hold the line on pluralism. And that is something very important. And it's something that sometimes it's inconvenient. On human rights, when they apply to people we disagree with, on democracy, when the process produced results we didn't want to. That's not weakness. That's the hardest political discipline that actually exists. And this is why IFLOR exists. Across more than 100 member organizations, across every region of the world, to build this discipline, to connect young liberals from Taipei to Beirut to Tunis to Germany and to across many other countries as well, that IFLORI was taking part in it actively through our seminars, through our GAs, through our member organization. And there's still a lot of rooms like a lot of doors to open as well in IFLORI. So I want to say that uh, that it doesn't get said enough in rooms like this. The threats to liberal movement don't only come from the outside. Sometimes they were our own values. And they are not like just the far right that they are our threat. And they are right not only the days of the authoritarian and the religious nationalism that us are our threat. Sometimes, as I said, the threat is internal. It wears our own value as a custom while working to fracture, distract, and destabilize from within. And a movement that cannot recognize that confuse loyalty to a person or fraction with loyalty to principle, is a movement that will defeat itself before any opponent get that chance. And this is why it's really important for us as a liberal to prioritize our values and to reconnect with the values of liberalism itself. Because as I said, sometimes it's very easy to just get lost in all the conflict that is happening worldwide. Because now, if you want to list it all, it would be a very overwhelming list. So liberal youth today don't have the luxury of internal games. We have wars to respond to. Disinformation ecosystem that counter, democratic backslide to document and to resist. Young people across, for example, my region, across Eastern Europe, across the global South, who are risking something real to claim that freedom and to claim the freedom we debate in conferences in IFLARI. We owe them better than fragmentation. We owe them a movement that is serious about its own integrity, and it is about its external enemies. And that's why I'm here, like we are here, like as Iflary as well, to build that space. And the more we give those spaces, the more we create spaces where people can come together, can talk about sensitive topics, because sometimes we want to avoid sensitive topics because we are afraid of disagreement, we are afraid of different opinions. But we have to remind that this is what also being a liberal is about, is to respect and to tolerate others even when you strongly disagree on a specific situation. And now also, if you want to go more into the defending of like the democracy, the freedom, the human rights, and the pluralism, this is something very interesting that I always say as well, like within my organization and within the work that I do, that people do talk about democracy as it's something that like we build it. Sometimes you have it or you don't. It's not. It's a practice. And like any practice, if you stop doing it, you lose it. So, what we are watching right now globally is not the collapse of democracy from the external assault. It's the erosion from it from within through legitimate process, legal instrument, and electing majorities who then proceed to dismantle the check that protect minorities and inconvenient truth. This is why defending democracy cannot mean only defending election. It means defending the institution that makes elections meaningful: the press, the court, the civil society, the right to dissent, the protection of those whose rights are less popular to protect. And freedom is not the majority vote. Human rights are not a cultural preference. And pluralism, the hardest one, means defending the right of people you disagree with to exist in the same political space as you. And this is the liberal commitment. It is uncomfortable, it is sometimes unpopular, and what is important that it should be non-negotiable as well. Young people in this space need to understand that defending these values is not a passive inheritance. It is active, daily, and often do cost the choices that we are giving. So when we talk more about, I see like the hand is okay. Yeah, maybe that was a
Don't worry
mistake
about
there.
it. We're getting ready with all the questions from this side. Yeah, continue.
Don't worry about it. So if you also want to make it more of a question about how youth can respond today to polarization, to populism, to war, to digital misinformation, the playbook of polarization is not complicated. It's just effective. Find a want, economic, cultural, historic, pour salt on it, name it an enemy, and offer a strong man as the cure. Repeat across every platform until the algorithm does the work for you. Young people are not uniquely vulnerable to this, but we are uniquely targeted because we are the largest demographic online, uh, which is the youth, and because our political identity are still forming, and because we are angry, and often for very legitimate reasons. So what do we do? What do we do today as youth? First, we do not fight disinformation with counter propaganda. We fight it with political education, with media literacy, with creating spaces where young people can ask hard questions without being handed pre-packaged answers. And this is also one of the things that we do it in IFLARI is the non-formal education that is a liberal tradition that we always work on it. It's been 79 years that IFLARI exists, and it's been like a very long time that we do those seminars because we believe that when we gather youth together, we do not want to give them the package, how liberals should act, how liberal are, but we want them to get and to think, in fact, what is actually being a liberal does mean, and to ask those questions, to challenge those thoughts. And this is why sometimes, as I said, like our movement as liberal, do we think that there's a lot of disagreement in it, but that disagreement is also very healthy. It means that we are giving this freedom to the people to disagree on topics. But what is also important, that to know that disagreement should have a limit, so we do not lose our movements. So this is like first when it comes about disinformation. Second, when it comes to populism, this is something that I always advise, that we do not respond to populism by becoming it. The temptation to simplify, to mobilize through outrage, to build identity through enemy making, we have to resist it when it would be electorally useful, especially then. And especially, as like I said, it's very easy when we tackle like in war zones and in conflict zone, there is a rise of populism because everyone is angry, everyone is talking from an emotional perspective. And then we as liberal, we love to have a percentage, we love to have numbers. And I feel this is also what we need to use as liberal, is the balance between that. How come that, how sometimes we have to tackle people with emotions? And this is what, through my studies as clinical psychologist and my focuses, I also focused a lot on how can we today talk with people while understanding the collective trauma that they are living and the collective ideas that they have inherited from generations that comes before and before and before. And that is something also very useful to all the youth movements and to all the political party, that focusing on statistics and number is very important, but it's still a human being that is there. And we also need to talk with them on a personal level, to connect with them, to show them that we understand that what they care about is to now have a house, instead of just presenting those specific ideas of how to do that. And third, if also we want to talk about war, we cannot afford a comfortable neutrality. When we see young people, for example, in my region, in Ukraine, in Sudan, that are living the consequences of political failure that happens in room like this one, silence from liberal youth movement is not balanced. It is abundant. And sometimes we have to go back to to our values, to what we believe in it as liberal, and to actually talk about this, because sometimes we also avoid talking about controversial topic because we are afraid from how that would be seen, how this would be concluded. And that's what we call is why the youth are honestly living as well in a high anxiety level, because they feel that they have to be alert on every single thing that they share. And finally, when we also like talk about polarization that often win in the context of Lebanon, right now what we are also like watching in my region, and I'm following up very closely, is how there is a huge right of polarization. We have an extreme right wing that now is being much more stronger, with a stronger narrative, and then the extreme leftists that they are as well like defending this narrative, and it often go when there is a conflict. So this is how extremists like do take advantage from that. That is like their vitamin. They see there is something, a conflict, a crisis going on, they use this crisis to start like getting more and more and more people to them. So polarization often wins not because extremists are strong, but because the center fragments. Internal division, personal rivalities, functional games, these are not just organizational problem. They are strategical gifts to everyone who wants liberal movement to fail. And this is why, more than any time, we really have to unite as liberal. There is worldwide, wherever we zoom in any country, we will find that there is plenty of things going on. And you see also the liberal movements that sometimes they just want to prove a point. Sometimes they just want to have a conflict internally. And that brings more of a division. Sure, we can divide as much as we can our movement, but how that would actually protect the future generations, that we also want to convince them why liberalism is the right answer for today's problem, if we ourselves as all are also creating the problem by not being united. And of course, by uniting, it doesn't mean that we are all having the same ideas, no, but that we are all having the same values that we believe in it, the freedom of speech, the individual right, the free trade, like what we actually believe as it as liberal. And finally, if as well, I want to talk about the role of IFLRI in connecting liberal youth across the region. So we have our office that is based in Berlin, and IFLRI is not just about that office that is based in Berlin and just work there. It is a global movement. And it is genuinely a political home for liberal youth who believe that nowhere else to go. They doesn't feel that they are seen, heard anywhere else. IFRA is a political house, political home for those individuals. And think about what that means in practice. A young liberal activist in Tunis and one in Taipei share almost nothing in their immediate political context. Different regime, different pressure, different risk, but they share something fundamental. I believe that that individual matters. The freedom is worth defending, and pluralism is not a threat but a resource. And if your job is to make that shared belief visible and actionable. For the first time, for example, in history, in my region, I got elected as the first female president of my region. That is something that I always hold. I always say to my region that we need to be visible. We need to also like talk about what is the issue so we can find solutions. Because as well, if we are not being presented, then the solution will not present everyone. So this is why we have to be presented in order for IFLRI to gather everyone and for us to actually find what is the middle ground, what is happening, and to see the whole situation as it is. And at the same time, IFLRI must hold the global frame because the fights are connected. Democratic backsliding in Hungary affect liberal norms everywhere. What happened, for example, in my country, it always, in a way, do affect the diaspora communities across three continents. And a federation is a federation of 100 organizations is only strong as its sense of shared purpose. The purpose has to be renewed actively, institutionally, and personally. In every General Assembly, in every training, in every statement and resolution, in every conversation between our members, we have never met, but they are fighting for the same values, and that is important. This is what IFLRI is about. This is what IFLRI will continue to be about. And this is why we always do advocate for people join our movement. IFLRI is, as we said, this political home. And if there's any organization that you also know that they are interested in joining IFLRI, you still have few days to do that. So you are more than welcomed as well to connect with me so we can, as much as we can, be present, be visible, so we can always bring as much as we can different perspective that are committed to the same goal that we believe in it as liberal. So thank you, and I hope I didn't talk for too long, but yeah, thank you.
Spoken like a real liberal, bringing out the facts, telling us the pros and cons, where we are going, how we're headed, and how much sometimes you have to be in it, how much you're hated at times, and how much you want to fight back as well. Congratulations for being the first woman of starting things up. Someone would have definitely influenced you, got you on the mode, and I'm pretty sure you are getting so many others involved now to be on that drive as same as you as well. Hania, we're going to come back to you. I'm just going to quickly remind our viewers that you can send in your questions now, and you can mention whom your question should be addressed to. Feel free to drop it on the chat, and we'll be happy to take it on. We're crossing over now to Michelle. Michelle, you've started a lot of things, and I think there would have been a lot of questions at that time on how, why is it really needed? We need the culture. We need to protect society. And then here we are as liberals. We are going forward with it. Take me through your examples on how did it all start, how the young activists actually got out there.
Yeah, thank you for sharing from Calvin and also from Annie. Before to sharing, today actually a lot of from Taiwan, especially from especially the deputy director, his good friend from LY to join. People can raise question and for discussion. So some brief sharing from my side from Taiwan. I think the reason why a lot of liberal youth participate in politics is come from our own story. The story of mine as a Taiwanese, the most important thing for me is to protect my own country. So many of the Taiwanese young people participate in politics is due to the 2014 Sunflower Movement. It was a time when Taiwan's government was KMT, a very pro-China party, and they're going to have a more stronger bond between Taiwan and China. And it led to a very huge and dramatic social movement in Taiwan. And it come to the result that start from 2016, DPP becoming the governing party of Taiwan. And if we move the time to be more closer, 2019, the Hong Kong movement in Hong Kong is also the reason why a lot of youth in my generation participate in politics. So it was also the movement that aroused me to get more closer to politics. And I was graduated from law school. I should be a lawyer, working in a law firm, but it is not my career now. The reason I've started to participate in politics is mainly about the reason that is very strong in our heart is that we want to protect our country. But what is more deeper within the identity of a Taiwanese is about the values that are behind the identity. So many of the youth in Taiwan was discussed on topics that there are some values that we protect in Taiwan, but those values are not protected in China. So if Taiwan become part of China, that we will lose this identity and we'll also lose this value. So younger generation in Taiwan cares about the gender equality a lot in Taiwan. So that is also we frequently discuss that if Taiwan one day become part of China, we will no longer have the gender equality environment in our country. So what I would like to emphasize on is many of the liberal and democratic youth in Taiwan put much effort in participating in politics in Taiwan. The first thing is that we really want to protect our identity of Taiwanese, and which is we were really proud of. And the reason we're proud of it is not only about nationality, it's also about the values that we insist, and it is embraced within this identity. So under this understanding of the youth in Taiwan, I would also like to move forward to why I emphasize on a lot of social movement activists in Taiwan, like me, also get part of become the member in the political party, especially in DPP, that we therefore found out that besides being a protester, activist, the most important is when we get older, how can we get the skill of being a governing party, or even how we get the skill of governance. So besides only doing the advocacy or the protest on the street, if we're part of the party, we're part of the government, we're proud of being the people who make the decision, what kind of decision that we should make and what kind of techniques we can do to really make us those people who can make the right decision for the country. So nowadays, a lot of youth participate in DPP and also in DPP youth. Some of our members were also online listening to this sharing today. We come from different backgrounds, have different techniques, and we're also majoring in different topics and departments. But we come along together in DPP is in Taiwan, just as Calvin and Hania mentioned about this information, we counterpart a lot of the information from China. And it is on different topics and different issues. And one example I can raise is about the agricultural products in Taiwan. Beforehand, in 2008, 80% of the agricultural products of Taiwan were exported to China. But it becomes a very critical issue in Taiwan that our export products can easily be controlled by China, and they can easily stop the imported due to their own awareness, and which will make the economy of Taiwan to be very weak. But within the past 10 years of DPP becoming the government party, we dropped down the export rate from Taiwan to China from 80% to only 2% now, which means that we put the eggs in different bags. So most of the agricultural product that Taiwan now we export is mainly to the United States, to the European country, and to Japan. So which make Taiwan cannot be easily controlled by China. But a lot of this information that is regarding from China to Taiwan is targeting this agricultural product that make Taiwanese believe that we can only rely on China to make Taiwan's economy great. So a lot of students that graduated from agricultural backgrounds, even they're not studying politics, they start to realize that they want to make our country better. It's not only about the way that we participate in politics, but also to make the agricultural product better that can be sold to European country, to United States, and to Japan. So what I would like to mention is the youth in Taiwan, not only those who only participate in the party or in the politics, cares about the identity of being Taiwanese and make Taiwan independent and not easily controlled by authoritarian regimes. Youth in Taiwan of different backgrounds are doing the same things due to their own interest and their experience. So my sharing in conclusion is that from a Taiwanese perspectives, the value or the term that we implicated as democratic or liberal is not only about those that is very value things. For the Taiwanese people in Taiwan, it's more about daily lives. We want to make ourselves democratic and liberal. We don't want to control by another country who want to invade our country. It is not only about voice out, say, I'm Taiwanese. It is also voice out so that people know that we don't need to rely on any authoritarian regime to support our economy. Taiwan can have our self-sufficient economy under a very independent authority that we don't need to rely on them. So using Taiwan, even though they are not part of DPP or they are not like highly interested in politics, they're doing their best in different fields in order to make Taiwan independent and also a country that not only have a great economy, it is not only about a semiconductor, but also on different fields. So that is sharing from my side. And I also would like to hear more from the questions of the audience. Thank you.
Yep, it looks like the panelists are ready for questions from the audience. And thank you, Michelle, because I believe most of them, anyone joining politics, starts with their own story. And then with the whole point of protecting their country and the values of their identity needs to be protected as well. But the liberals are always ahead. They fight for justice. They bring out the points. They also educate the people in what they're doing when it comes to politics. But the question always revolves around, are we doing politics right? Are we carrying the past in the same way? Do we move forward with the same techniques? Are people more aggressive? Do they know the right way of doing it? Security for themselves, protection for themselves, all of this are big areas of topics of discussion. So the question panel is open, and I believe we have a huge Sri Lankan audience joining us here today, and we're waiting till the questions are thrown. Until then, let's cross over back to Calvin. You did mention how Germany works around and how you engage in politics is constantly questioned. You also want to look forward in, taking it forward, bringing in modernization, also the trust in the people where you see young people are disconnected. Calvin, do you think that this is something where education is lacking, or is it the point that we don't have time to invest in a training, but we are also moving forward with constantly fighting, constantly bringing our fight to the table? How do you see this?
I'm not sure if I would necessarily say that education is lacking. At least when I talk about our context in Germany, what I would say is that we see an increasingly polarized society, especially over the past, I would say, 4 years. And I have to come back to the issue of social media again, actually, because I do think that social media plays a big role in how our society is becoming more radicalized and more polarized, and also how it undermines trust in our political institutions in a certain way, and not just in our political institutions, but in politicians in general. And what we see, and I mean, there are studies on that as well, not just with regards to Germany, but also to other countries in Europe, is that there are authoritarian countries like Russia, but also China, that have a direct interest in undermining trust in our political system and trust in our democratic values and institutions. And we have lots of bots on social media, TikTok, whatever, but also people that buy into those narratives, of Russia, of China, illiberal narratives. And here is a central problem, I think, that we are facing in Germany. We do not lack political education. I would say we have quite good system of political education in Germany. But what we do lack is how we educate people to deal with social media in the current age. Now, as Julis, we are very much in favor of keeping, of course, the internet and social media open. We are very much against any kind of social media bans that are also currently debated in Germany, especially from the conservatives, but increasingly also, for instance, from the social democrats. But there's a real danger behind people, and especially young people, not knowing how to deal with social media and not knowing how to deal with the dangers that come with it and the challenges that are posed on it. And that is something where we definitely need better education. Now, just to add one more sentence, when it comes to the internal workings within Julis, but also the FDP. Of course, there are also different positions on that issue, particularly in the FDP. But I think we, as the youth wing of the FDP, are quite good when it comes to at the moment pushing for skills education, political skills education. So we have started, for instance, a young leaders program within our own organization that we are now also trying to basically implement within our mother party. So that is one way where we also, again, as a youth wing, try to actively push for modernization within our mother party.
Thanks, Calvin. I think we've opened the Colombo room for questions, and I believe we have Raghu is going to open for questions, I'm told. Let's see how this goes. Hi, Raghu. Can you hear us?
Hi. You can see me, right? You can hear me well? Yeah,
Can
good.
see you.
Thank you for the panelists for all the great insights. I think it's a very important period that we actually discuss this while the world is going on into something different and it's shifting. So what I'm interested in knowing and having your ideas is about what I noticed from a Sri Lankan perspective is that there's been a big disconnect between people who understand or like to learn about and action on politics, and then those who are not very much learning about the political literacy part of things. So there's a small disconnect between the people, let's call them activists, and the ones who are not engaging in being an activist. How do you see this difference? How do you see in your countries to bridge these? Because Sri Lanka is one of the most literate country. We have more than 94% literacy in the country, but then when it comes to political literacy, it's quite low, in my opinion. In your countries also, you probably would have had all these progress especially in Germany. The political literacy is quite good. Is there anything that we can learn from your own countries and organizations, and how to incentivize people to actually try to even look into this? They are not even choosing or even realizing what they really support for. So is there anything that you can share with us in terms of advising us to make people get interested in political literacy?
Michelle, do you want to start?
Sure. From my understanding, that problem in many countries, even in Taiwan, the youth in Taiwan, part of the generation that cares about economy more than politics. That cares about their daily life more than cares about the ideology, the politics, and also about a stance on different types of issues. But what we as young activists, we're trying to do is we want to raise their awareness to make them believe that even they think those topics are related to only about economy or only about their daily lives, it is also part of politics. So, like for example, many of the youth in Taiwan cares about baseball. They want Taiwan to be more visible in the international baseball stadium. But if Taiwan is not recognized as a country, we don't have the right to participate in those competition. For example, the people youth generation in Taiwan cares about the stock market a lot, and the stock market is a very economic side, right? But if you only cares about economic and you don't care about politics, you won't understand the relationship between the United States and Taiwan actually do affect the stock market. So what we're trying to do in Taiwan is we're trying to raise a very small topics in the Taiwanese youth daily life to let them believe that even though those topics you may think it is not related to politics, but every small issues and also any small decision that affects your lives is actually related to politics. So that is why I raised the two example that is about a stock market and also about a baseball competition. Many people may think it is not related to politics, but in Taiwan, from my understanding, it is all related to politics. Yeah.
Hania, your thoughts?
Yeah, I would maybe divide this into two aspects. First, I feel that when we are very passionate about politics and we want to reach out to people, we tend to use very hard words for the people that are not really involved in politics. We want to refer to a specific article in our constitution. And that is something that, let's say, people that are not really into that will not understand what we are speaking. So we have to speak a more simplified language. And that not is because that they are not as educated as us, not, of course, not that, but they are not interested as much as we are. So this is why they are not that much into details. So we have to simplify the language as much as we can. And the second thing I would talk about is campaigning. Campaigning is a very important tool. In Lebanon, we have 51% of the population that doesn't vote during the parliament election. And that is a big fail of how we need to mobilize them, because they can, like the 51% can change all the equation in the country. But we are still not having like any real change when it comes to this. So this is why I think like we have to understand as well what demotivates youth. And once I feel well, I will finish my thesis. I think I can also like share it with the other, and it's mainly about how the PTSD and how the trauma and stress do influence people, to influence youth to be activists in politics. And that is also very important to understand that some people are afraid of the word politics. When we say politics, they think it's something very big, something that people will hate you after being like activist in that, and so on. So there is some definition that we have to recorrect. We have to make politics more accessible for the people, to make it more of a chill conversation, to make like a coffee discussion about politics, to go eat pizza and to talk about politics. So the more we simplify politics, we do not have to wear blazers all the time whenever we want to talk about it, the more we will actually be reaching out more and more people.
I can't agree with you more on how much people are afraid to join politics, and also to be labeled thereafter that you're this, you're that. and then it's also a constant battle of fights, of putting down other people, and then they take it on social media, and then it goes all over the place. It doesn't bring into the end result. Calvin, any thoughts?
I also very much agree with what Tanya just said, and it relates to also what I said in my opening remarks, that many people, young people nowadays, feel a disconnection from politics because they don't think that politics is connected to their everyday realities. When I look back at the last roughly 10 years of FDP in Germany, I think we were really, really good in 2017, for instance, of connecting politics with the everyday realities of young people, and in our 2017 campaign, because we had a very heavy emphasis on digitization back then, and we're very successful also in that election. And what we did was that we had a very simple message and a very simple narrative about how digitization just completely changes our society, changes not just politics, but the life of people in Germany. And we had Christian Lindner back then, who was back then still a very popular politician. We put him on many posters, set him in some nice motifs, and had a very good narrative that we were able to connect with him as a politician. And in the end, that led to electoral success of, I think, something like 10.7%, which was one of the, I think, best election results FDP ever had in Germany. So yeah, I think that is just a very concrete example of how we managed to actually connect a policy with the everyday realities of people in Germany. And in the end, it turned out to be a very electoral success for us. And it also, in the years after 2017, in 2017 and in the years after 2017, led to many young people joining FDP, and to FDP up until today, actually, still being quite strong with young people. So, for instance, even in the last Bundestag elections, where we, in total, did not meet the 5% threshold, we still had more than 6% with young people. So if it was just about young people, we would still be in the Bundestag. Unfortunately, old people vote as well, because we are really, really bad with people aged 60 years or older. So yeah, just a concrete example there. One thing that we're currently also pushing heavily for in Germany is a reform of the pension system, and I also talked about this briefly earlier, connected with a stock-based pension system. I won't go into all the details of the German pension system because it's just very depressing. But yeah, try to connect policies that matter to people with everyday realities of the people, and try to add a simple but convincing narrative. I mean, that would be my solution. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
But I love that line, Calvin. It was a beautiful ending to what we've discussed. I see the Colombo office is having a lovely drink over there. Thirsty at the moment, but it looks very delicious. But we also would like all of them to pose in a question and tell us anything else you'd like to connect with our speakers and ask. All the liberals are quiet or in pensive thoughts. All right, then. Can I ask all three panelists to give in your final thoughts and feedback on what you have to say as your final message?
Just quickly, Sharon, I think there was one raised hand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
great.
think
We got a question. Okay, I have a question for Calvin. Since he did mention something about how liberals in his country are viewed as elitist to intellectual or something to those effects, How would you approach renormalizing intellectualism and therefore liberalism amongst the wider youth today? Because one unfortunate culture I've observed here at home is smart shaming, especially in schools. And I'm sure it's not limited to the Philippines. So, how would you go about it? I think I've heard some of this in Taiwan as well. But yeah, Calvin, your thoughts?
That's a great question. I'm afraid I don't have a perfect answer to this. Now, I don't know about the exact situation of the Liberal Party in the Philippines. Of course, it's also a very well-established party. I know that. The situation that we face in Germany is that people have a lot of cliches about us as liberals. They often view us as, especially us as Julis, we are often viewed as the rich kids that only drive fancy cars, and we all invest in stocks, and there are all of those cliches. And in 90% of the cases, those cliches are wrong. How to renormalize intellectualism? I'm not sure if we need to renormalize it again, because it is normalized in the sense that nowadays, more than ever, young people are studying in Germany. They go to universities instead of taking up an apprenticeship, for instance. What is rather the problem is that we have to find ways to tackle the cliches about us. And for that, to be honest, I don't have a perfect answer to that. We as Julis, we will always try to tackle those cliches by simply not, living up to them. But there are just certain circles, and I mean, especially from the left wing, that will not care about whether we are not wearing suits to a congress, for instance, or not, because they just have those thoughts in their head that we act in certain ways, and they will not change their mind. So for me, it's not so much about smart shaming or renormalizing intellectualism. It's about just staying true to our values, living up to our values, being honest and transparent about our values again. And I think that's not so much a problem with Julis than with FDP, especially because of the way we handled the last coalition in Germany, and also how we left the coalition. Many people thought that was intransparent, and to a certain degree it was intransparent and also dishonest. Yeah, so I think it's rather these kinds of problems that we as liberals in Germany have to face, and we should not try to shy away from the fact that most of our members and most of our supporters do have a degree of intellectual education. It is what it is. It's the same with the Greens, and they're also not shying away from it. They're staying true to their values, and it makes them successful.
Thanks, Calvin. Thank you, and thank you, Zach, for that very how do you put it, important as well as reality question that's brought in here, and brought into the topic of it as well. So as time has come close, can I ask all three panelists to share your final thoughts? Can I start with Hania?
Yes. So once again, I want to thank you a lot for first the initiative as well of your organization, and second for having me to speak with you, to connect with you, and as well to learn more from the panelists that are here. So thank you for that. And if I also want to share one last thing, is that we as a liberal should take the motivation from each other. So let us also like connect on a personal like sentiment as well, and to focus that we are human beings that are doing our very much like our best in the liberal movement. We have to uplift each other, we have to support each other, we have to hear to each other, and that would actually unite our liberal movement and will help us to beat the enemy that comes from the external as well. So that would be the most important thing that I would say. Let us be together in the fight that we are all fighting for.
Thanks, Hania. Michelle?
Again, thank you for inviting me, and also I'm grateful to have a chance with Calvin and Hania. I think for the liberal use, just as Calvin and Hania both mentioned about the social media platform actually changed a lot when it comes to the discussion, and for in Asia, especially more severe because some of the countries do still have a very high control on the social media, and the youth voice cannot really be seen or be visible over the internet. And also, this information problem is still very severe, ongoing in the Asia region. So I think today, as the discussion is very engaging, and a lot of different thoughts were also proposed. But I think if in the future, if have a better occasion, we can also have a more deeper discussion on how the liberal youth around the world see the discussion on social media, and how we can really find out some really good tools or ways that we can have a better communication over the internet. But besides that, I think the real networks in the youth wings within the party is still very important. So like LY Philippines, they have a very strong network, I believe, because so many people participate today. So on DPP youth, we also have our own youth network. And I think these real youth networks, and we meet face to face, is actually very important in how we can convey the message to be more visible and also a better understanding to the public. So I'm very grateful for the opportunity today, and I really hope that in the future can have more chance in exchange of different ideas in regarding of the social media platform usage. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Calvin?
Yes, also from my side, thank you again, Sharon, for moderating. Thank you very much to Spark Inbox for organizing this event. I am also very much looking forward to just, as I already said in my introductory remarks, to just be the start of an exchange between liberals from Asia, but also from Europe. And I'm very much looking forward also to our joint political academy ahead of the IFRE-GA together with Cult Youth in Taipei. We had a similar event just 2 years ago in Singapore, also with Cult Youth. That was very fruitful, and that I look back with a big smile on, and I'm very much looking forward to renew those contacts and to also come up with some new policy ideas, actually concrete policy ideas that we as liberals have to face, especially when it comes to being resilient against authoritarian threats, being politically resilient as communities, being resilient against disinformation, and being resilient against, like also sadly, hard military threats, be it in Asia or be it here in Europe. Those are challenges that we all face, and we as liberals, although we are all individuals and like to talk about the individual, also need to understand that sometimes we need to stand together and cooperate with each other to tackle those threats that face all of us. And I'm happy to do that with my liberal friends in Asia and in IFRE and across the world. And thanks again for all of you for participating. And yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Calvin. And yes, so as we conclude today's discussion, we'd like to thank sincerely to all our speakers, our speaker, as well as our panelists and our participants, the organizing committee, for contributing to such a very meaningful, engaging, and eye-opening discussion, bringing new aspects, bringing also a revision or open up discussion on the topic that we have for today. Today's discussion also reminded us that young people are not only the future of democracy, but they are also the present defenders, the innovators, and the advocates who really need to use their voice, who actually use their voice when it comes to fighting for freedom and peace for their country. And this exchange of perspectives across regions demonstrates the importance of solidarity, dialogue, and collaboration in strengthening liberal values globally. So on behalf of Spark Inbox, thank you once again for joining us, and we hope this conversation inspires you, continued cooperation, and we hope you'll action among your liberal leaders worldwide to be a part as well. So from Spark, that is, we look forward in seeing you at another session as well. Until then, have yourself a wonderful day, evening, morning, whatever your plan is. From us, it's probably good night and how it goes on around the world, but it's very similar to where we are with our common goal and objective. And that's how we do it. So I see a lot of thank you messages rolling up and down. Thank you very much for sending us that. And we'll see you next time. I'm Sharon Mascarenhas. And take care. Have a lovely day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.